Insight Myanmar Podcast stands with the Burmese people resisting the tyrannical military rule. For those now listening in country, please know that you are not alone. Our platform and the thousands of listeners choosing to hear these stories keep you in our hearts. Far more people than you may know are sending you metta and including you in prayers. Your courage and sacrifice are not going unnoticed. You are an inspiration to the world. Thank you for allowing us to play some small role in your revolution. May you be safe and may you be free. All right, for this episode of Insight Myanmar Podcast, we're trying something new. This should be a very interesting conversation that we have underway. We have two guests this time. One guest is Thiri, who listeners may be familiar with from her past podcast with us, as well as her participation on some of the panels that we've been running. And we also have a new guest, Jake. And the purpose of this conversation is quite interesting. I'll share that, and then I'll turn the table over to the two guests. So after we aired Thiri's podcast last year, which I guess 2 years ago now, which was shortly after the coup that followed, Jake, as a listener, was so moved by hearing the story that he began sending donations to our nonprofit Better Burma, and asking if in some way Thiri's work could be benefited, and the work that she was describing doing that was saving lives and contributing to humanitarian projects. And this continued not just for months, but for years, that this intention to want to support Myanmar and particularly support the work that Thiri was doing persisted. And Thiri was deeply moved by this show of support and suggested the idea of all of us coming together on a podcast to just discuss this experience from both sides, the experience of listening and feeling moved and wanting to support and to give, and the experience of being able to open up and to share something so difficult and so painful, and to know that there's allies out there that do listen, that can make a difference, that do care. And so we thought this could be a very powerful conversation to be able to have in exploring those different perspectives, and also touching upon all the listeners out there that are on either side of this equation, that are either allies that are listening and wanting to support and find a way that they can help in some way, as well as those that are on the front lines of resisting this military regime and trying to stand for human rights and democracy, and the feeling of knowing what it's like to know that others out there do care and you're not alone. So that's the basis of today's podcast conversation. I think first we'll go to Jake. And because this all started with Thiri's first interview that was done and his experience in listening to that as a listener and taking that in, Jake, maybe you can just describe what your experience was listening to that podcast, and what about the story and what you were hearing led to want to not just passively listen, but actually take an active role of supporting and contributing to what you were listening about.
Okay. I can tell you exactly where I was. I was driving through Kansas and Missouri. I was going to go visit my parents, and I had a couple hours to kill in the car, and I just very kind of started listening to the podcast because I was interested in what was going on with Burma, and I just started listening to what Thiri was saying, and you know, I just kind of got really caught up in it. And I remember at one point when you were asking her about like what she had to do to stay safe and what needed, just kind of what she had to do. And I remember her talking not only about like what she had to do, but like how that felt and like what the reality of that was like. And I kind of got sucked in at that point. And, you know, to me, it was kind of really interesting to hear somebody just be kind of vulnerable and intimate like that rather than just kind of like analyzing or talking about like this needs to be done and all that. And like I just remember thinking at some point like, you know, I should probably support that. So like I made a mental note to when I, you know, got to where I was going that I would kind of look up and see what I could do to maybe start that. And that's kind of that's the short version.
And can I ask as well, or what kind of background or knowledge did you have about Burma when you were tuning in and listening to
that? I don't know. I'm going to sound really naive, but I've always been interested in Asia and that kind of thing. I have a Buddhist practice, so there's that connection. But I've always been really interested in Southeast Asia, and the fall before the coup happened, I was starting to get interested in Burma and how complex it was. And I was reading a lot of stuff. And then the coup happened. And I remember seeing a lot of things in the New York Times. And they were really good about covering it for at least up until, I don't know, probably the end of March when that all happened. And, you know, there's lots of pictures, and it just really floored me that to see people just like take such huge risks for something that, you know, I just kind of took for granted. Mm-hmm. And then the violence started happening, and I just remember feeling really like, I don't know, helpless, I guess is probably the best word. Like there's all these people suffering, and here I am, you know, I'm not rich or anything, but I don't suffer for anything. I can go buy a guitar if I want to buy a guitar, stuff like that. And I'm very comfortable. And there's all these other people on the other side of the world who are like using slingshots to fight machine guns for something that I take for granted every day. So that's like how I really got involved with it. And I don't know, it's kind of weird for me because I've always been pretty apolitical. I remember in grad school, I used to get into a fight with one of my friends who was kind of how should I say this? A self-appointed Marxist. And this was right around when Obama was first getting elected, and he would like get all enthusiastic about that. And I was just like, that's just so silly. Like, why is he getting all worked up about that? But for whatever reason, you know, I've gotten, probably because of what I've seen, and, you know, even after I initially started following it, I've gotten involved. I've even written to my congressman and tried to do other things that I can. I mean, I'm pretty isolated here. I live in a small town in South Texas that's like 2 hours away from any kind of metropolitan area. So like there's not a lot I can do to be physically involved, but I'm trying to do what I can, you know, from where I am with what my reality is.
Right. And so I'm curious, when you were listening to Thiri's podcast, you know, you've described you have an emerging meditation practice. You've always been interested in Asia. You have started to become more interested in Burma, and then we're following the big news stories as the coup first broke with Time Magazine and New York Times and other places that were covering it. And then as the news started to drift off, you found our podcast, which was telling these in-depth personal stories and studies and analyses and everything else. And you hear a 2-hour conversation where Thiri is, for much of that conversation, is describing, as you'd say, deeply personal, vulnerable, intimate details about the lived experience of what it's like to be a human at this moment, and how her days affected. I mean, it affected me as well. I still remember a dozen things about what she said and examples she gave and the imagery she laid out. But given this context, we now know of what brought you to wanting to listen, and the receptivity you had and interest in taking in this information. What do you recall about your feeling about that moved you so much about what Thiri was saying, or the way she said it, or the way it impacted you and how you absorbed it? What do you remember about what she was bringing to the table that really was able to break through in a way that was perhaps profound?
Well, for me, being the good English teacher that I am, like, stories are the way in for me to kind of, I mean, I don't know, literature in general has kind of like opened up my whole world. I grew up in a tiny little town in the Midwest, and, you know, and I knew nothing of the world. So literature was my way. But to answer your question, for me, like, as a teacher and also somebody who's in recovery, like, what I've seen the big things happen is when things are done between two people. And, like, just because just the particularities of it, the, you know, kind of the emotional openness, like, there's a lot of courage in that really, you know, not everybody has. And, like, I wanted to just, like, do whatever I, you know, within my limited means of just whatever I could to kind of support that. And, um, you know, it's the details and knowing, like, for a certain individual, like, this is their reality. To me, it makes it much more vivid. You use the word imagery, and that's like, that was perfect. Like, I can remember some of the stuff she said too. I remember her talking about, like, she hid her phone in her underwear drawer because the Tatmadaw was afraid of looking in that. Right. And so to me, like, it's more about just learning how it affects individuals' lives, because as a collective, it's easy to, as like a group of people, you can, like, as humans, I feel like we kind of stereotype and lump people into groups, but, like, you can't, like, fight against so much somebody's particular experience because you can't deny them that truth.
Right. Right. Yes, that's powerful. Let's turn over to Thiri for a moment. And I want to ask you, Thiri, what you remember about that interview, and what led to you in wanting and choosing to speak and choosing what you said, and any feeling after it was done. I do want to pause before asking, because I I do want to note that both Jake and I remember really clearly so many parts of what you said. You reference having entire blank spots of your memory, and which you attribute to the trauma of the coup. You give an example in that second interview of pretty shocking things that you had forgotten. For example, that you're asking about how your grandmother was doing to your mom, and then realizing that your grandmother had passed away and you had somehow forgotten that. And so I'm not sure how much you actually remember of that interview, and of those details that Jake and I remember so clearly. But I wonder if you can speak to just what drove you to do that interview, the intention of it, and if you do, what you do remember of it, or what stands out from that in deciding to share and speak on the topics that you did. What stands out with that?
Mm, Thank you, Joel, and also thank you, Jay. I'm like a bit emotional now, and like hearing from Jake, and like how he remember, and that how one person, like me as one person, saying this, and another person just carry it on, pass it on, and just do some actions within your means, like Jake. I'm really grateful about that. But going back to your questions, Jor, about how much I remember, to be honest, I don't. I don't quite remember some of the details that you do because that was a very moment. I remember that I was recording to for that podcast, and I was still in the country. So and that the place that I was staying, I was doing that recording at one of my safe houses, and the place was so tiny, and you can even hear people walking up the door. So and also I asked you to do the I remember I asked you to do the recording in my morning because I feel like mornings are pretty safe because at nighttime I never know when they're gonna knock the door and when they're gonna just show up, and I don't feel safe about it. But at least in the morning, the fact that I can see the light, I feel like, oh, at least they're not coming to the door. So maybe the reason I was sharing that feeling and I could record it because that was the me feeling at the very moment. That's how I was living in fear, knowing that somebody's gonna knock the door. They can knock the door. Your neighbor can hear it, and I don't know who my neighbors are. Maybe they are siding with the military, or maybe they're siding with us. So that feeling. So I think that's make me happen to share that detailed moment and the detailed feeling at that time, which I I don't quite remember it. I can remember the some of the event as a as a memory flip chart, but the feeling because I'm not in the fear place anymore. I'm not in the country anymore, so I don't quite relate to that constant fear that I was living in anymore. So the feeling right now is a bit different because I am out of the country. I'm in a safe place, but also another kind of emotional journey that I've been through. So the reason I agreed to talk on the podcast was that I usually do not speak. I usually do not like to involve in the making a political stance or like sharing things or sharing my story. I like to share the story, but like I don't generally involve um, actively in any political or social issues. Even though I've been working mostly behind the scene, I would speak only when I feel it's necessary, only when I feel like I need the echo of hope back because that comes from my past experience. In 2017, 2018, we have a very big Rohingyas crisis. So Rohingyas crisis has been happening since before, but only around 2017 and 18 that got to the international attention. But even the beginning, we didn't get the enough of the voices going out, and me as a ethnic majority and religious majority, I stuck with Rohingya, but there were very few of us standing up for Rohingya. So I just I just took I don't really like to talk in public, but then I took a stand and I spoke up and make I talk about what is happening for in Rohingyas area in Rakhine State, also for Rakhine people as well. So after that public panel, there are people reaching out to me from different Burmese people who are abroad or who are Burmese American or who are inside the country. A few of them reached out to me and told me that that is a hope, like I make a voice, and so they feel like they are not alone. And then they came and thanks me, and I also thanks them because I was feeling hopeless that I was alone, and then they were feeling kind of hopeless that they were alone. But someone make a noise, like when you're in a lost forest, when you make a voice, that voice is echoed to another person, and who may be lost like you in the forest, they came back to you. So from that lesson, from that experience, whenever I am in a hopeless situation, I tend to speak. I tend to make a voice, hoping that there will be somebody out there will reach out to me and bring the hope back to me. So that's the reason I decided to share my story, even though my story is there are people who are way more difficulty than me in the country. But yeah, that's to wrap up. That's the reason I decided to share my story and share my feeling, just to give out hope to in the dark world.
Thanks for that. And I find it really remarkable hearing both of you are saying something similar from different sides. There's a commonality of kind of moving beyond one's normal circle or activities and acting an emergent action that is taking place out of necessity to reach out, whether it's in whatever type of reaching out that is, to connect with another person. And on Thiri's case, you're this when you spoke out against the Rohingya, when you were one of really the first Bamar publicly to take that stand, and it was certainly not very popular at the time, but there were many who knew that you were on the right side of history and reached out to you privately afterwards. And then when you spoke on this podcast, and you normally, and I know you normally like to be behind the scenes and not very prominent, not in the spotlight, but you felt that this was a moment you really wanted to speak. You had something that you had to say. The moment required it, and so you did. And I have to say, it is rare for podcasts to get feedback. I've been an avid podcast listener for over a decade, and I don't know if I've ever really given feedback to all the podcasts I listen to on a religious basis, weekly. I just listen and enjoy. And so also now, as a producer of podcasts and a maker of podcasts, I'm not often treated with really knowing how people were impacted. And so when we do know, it's really quite exciting one way or the other. It's just quite nice to know when people are listening and how they feel, and gives us a lot of motivation and reflection on how to do things better. In this case, you got that feedback from Jake. You got it immediately in terms of wanting to financially be able to support the humanitarian work that you were doing, and you got it over time as this continued, and you got it just now from hearing his opening comments of how he was moved and impacted. And you started by your talk by saying how moved you were to hear this stranger from halfway across the world, someone outside of Myanmar, who was this ally to you and your cause and your work, and how deeply moving it was for you to hear that and to know that. So I wonder if you can expand on that and tell a little bit more, just how that feels, knowing that there's someone out there that is caring and supporting, and that you're not alone with this, as it can certainly feel if you're in a closet of a room where the military could come at any time, and you're just trying to stay safe from one day to the other. So how does that feel, just knowing, just that hearing just now that there was someone listening and stepping in and caring?
So yeah, I feel hurt. My voice is being heard. Somebody out there. And so the first time when you told me, like, hey, Thiri, you have somebody contributed money to you, and then it was it's not about the money though. Financially it's important, but it's not about the money. It's about the actions behind it. It's very, very important, because this is like, this give me hope and solidarity. So this is what I've been asking for. When I share my story, or people of Myanmar, I don't want people to see us as some kind of helpless human being, and I don't want people to just end up buying like, oh yeah, the situation is really bad and poor people, oh my god, we pray for you. And it's important, but like, that's not enough. I want an action. I was hoping for an action when I share my story. So this getting back from Jake, the not only the financial, at least it's an action. And for somebody to just listen and they just can sit in, but like, for Jake to, for example, like to send money, there are different process, right? He have to even little moment he have to use either if he use the mobile banking, he has to use his phone, he has to click it, and he has to put in effort to do that. And even before that, he have to have a willingness, whether willingness to give away of something he owns to a complete stranger across the wall. So there are little, smaller actions and smaller effort, even to the point of clicking send button on PayPal. So so when I hear that, it was like it's an actions, right? So it was really, it feel, I don't know, it feels so good that, oh, somebody out there, oh, at least my story, somebody listened to my story, and somebody listened to my podcast, and it 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 means a lot to me. It's a kind of hope and solidarity that I am asking for. So right now I have learned more, and he didn't stop just there sending money. He only Jake also do write the letters to their Congress people, and all the things that he has done within the capacity. And it's also, I have learned that the one person can change, can make a change. One person matters. Jake matters. I matters, and each of us matters in this. If you actually wants to involve in it, so I feel really, really, really grateful. Even though I have never seen Jake, and whenever I pray, I have the Metta praying. I really wish Jake to be healthy and be happy and peaceful in his life. And I really wish that he doesn't suffer just like we do. So, we are spreading Nidda. I was spreading Nidda to another stranger because I received it from him. And he gave me hope that, oh, telling story matters. There are people out there who may want to, who hear, and maybe I cannot tell the whole world about what's happening in our country, what's happening with my life. At least I could tell one person, and then that one person hear me, and and it's all matter. It's a small thing, little step, and the feeling itself, I really cannot express it because it's a really big feeling for me. It's a very complex and mixture of hope, and I feel love, mixture of hope, love, solidarity, and just feeling good, right? Somebody hear you. So I really cannot express it that well now, but like all I know is it just feels so good, and my eyes are watery. It's like even this morning, also I was watery. My eyes were watery when Jake was telling, and whenever I received that little kindness and little happiness and pieces by pieces, that actually makes my day. And Jake also remind me that I should be doing this, replicate this kind of small actions, good, small and good action to other people around me. So action of Jake actually also remind me to look after people around me, to at least to check in with them, and at least to share like one piece of donut. Like last night I took the tuk-tuk, and then I took the motorbike taxi, and then I gave the motorbike taxi driver a donut, which is like sharing. So it's a thing, little things, and I just every time whenever I remember, I just like to share from me, even though those are not the big things, because I remember exactly how it felt to be shared by somebody, a stranger. A random kindness from strangers means a lot to me. So I happen to add within my daily life from from something that I have learned from Jake and people, other strangers, other kindness from other strangers.
Jake, what are your thoughts on hearing that?
Well, I'll just say that when you first contacted me about doing this, I kind of got a little emotional too, because I never really thought that. I mean, I knew I was doing something, but like, and I had purposefully like tried to stay out of it. Like a couple of times, people asked me if I wanted her to send me a letter, and I said no, I don't want to. Like, I don't want her to feel obligated anyway, because I thought that would kind of like taint it. But I don't know, just to know that it actually did something is really nice feeling. Um, it's because there are ways that that has probably helped that I won't ever be able to know or understand. And, but that's okay. Um, you know, it's, it's what I can do is, kind of how I feel, but it feels really nice to know that it's helped.
Right. And I think this is also important to mention that our nonprofit has had over 900 individual donors since the coup. And for any one of those 900 donors who happens to be listening to this now, or perhaps the 901st donor who might give after hearing this, just to know that what you will give or what you have already, that this is the human element. And I mean, to hear these voices of no, and I think this is a very rare, an unusual moment to have a conversation of this nature where it's not the anonymity from it has been taken out, and the experience of giving and receiving, and then even the one who receives is not just in a passive receiving mode, as we hear that it encourages Thiri to share a donut with the motorbike taxi driver or just be kind to people around her. That this is just a memory that, or this is an indicator that for those that have given or will give, that this is the kind of impact it can have beyond, as Thiri so eloquently said, beyond what the material needs are, the process of going through that. It's a burden to think about doing that, and to part with something that one has, and to go through the whatever it's more than a click of a button, as she said. And knowing that her life and her country's welfare matters enough to someone to take that trouble, everything that includes, that's just quite a powerful thing to know, that support is there. And so we want to send this message as well to all 900 of you who have given in whatever form you have, that the support you have given has also reached its target in this way. And even though you might not hear so directly as this conversation is going, know that your support has made people not feel so alone. And I think with that, to check in with Thiri, I think this is an important point and dynamic to look at. This feeling of being alone, being isolated, and Myanmar has not really enjoyed neither international support on a massive level, nor really sustained media attention. And so there has been this growing despair and depression among many Burmese youth that after 2 years of continuing to resist. So I wonder, Thierry, if you can speak to this feeling of being alone or isolated in whatever form it's taken for you or for those with you who are on the struggle, and how some kind of international support in whatever form it takes, what role that plays in kind of breaking through these dark moods of feeling alone and isolated.
Now, 2 years. The end of this month, it will be 2 years since we were under the coup. So, to the level that it's, well, at least for me, I'm pretty clear that there is not much the international government will do and can do and will do, because I don't think it's more about the political will. So I don't see much of the political will at that level, the policy level, and also it's also practically, it's also a very deadlock position. So I don't see much changes in that political space, and so it's been 2 years living that. It's been like forever. It's very long, and we feel like we don't get enough support, and people don't even talk about us in the international media anymore because we are not the story anymore in the journalism or in the storytelling perspective, because there's no storytelling perspective. If things are flat, they can't tell it, so they don't want to tell it. Not that the conflict or the problems doesn't exist anymore, just turn the eyes away unless we have a very big very big things coming back again. So a lot of us are feeling alone and feeling like we're not being seen, or we're not being heard, and nobody really talk about us. So we really, it's in a way we feel like we're fighting for ourselves, which in we also believe that there's no supreme savior. We have to fight for our own life, but we want a little bit of, we want support. And this support, it's not material. It can be material because you can go through the financial supporting donation. That's one thing. The other thing is the people to people connection. So I would say there are two parts. One is a political space. There is a deadlock, but while we don't see much changes in the political space, we need to maintain the resilience among people and maintain the certain good things among us, like the kindness and sharings and love and everything. We should maintain it while we don't know when the futures, when the victories comes. So with that, we need support from international people, international public. Like, we want to talk to you about what's happening with our life, and also we want your support. And that support, like I always said, it's beyond material. You can write to us. You can write an open letter to us. You can write a small note. If you have any Burmese friends, just reach out to them and check in with them, because some of them may not be alive tomorrow, or some of them may not be maybe going through difficulty. Checking with them, or involved in our campaign, or the write to your Congress people to do the to do more on Myanmar, and that that kind of thing. So we are at this stage, yes, a bit lonely, but at the same time, we still don't lose hope. I still don't lose hope in people, um, because at the end of the day, it's as a as a human rights documentator, my work and my daily life in a way involve around the tragedies that I have to record the tragedy in details and everything, and also myself going through this brutality of the military and going away from home and everything. But at the end of the day, what I would remember, it's not all the tragedy and all the violations and how bad or how cruel human can be. It's more about, I would choose to remember the good things, even in the middle of the evil things going on, the good things even in the middle of hell, like loving kindness, support and sharing, and, and those kind of things are the things that I choose to remember and that I will remember. So I think that is needed for other Burmese people. So maybe you can write to us, you can make the pen pal, you can make a um, you know open letters, or you can just tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family members. If you know about Myanmar, tell them what's happening. And I think that's enough. And also, not only put in within yourself, just make sure that we know that you hear us, so that we know that, oh yeah, there are people out there who we are not forgotten. We are moving forward for our life, and we can celebrate the living. Yeah, a lot of people die, but also a lot of people are still living. and we should also celebrate the living in the hardship. So to wrap up, you know, we are feeling like we're alone, but you can be part of it. You can help us. You can support us, not to save us, but to help us. Um, you know, if you hear from us, make an echo back to us that you hear from us.
Thank you for that. Another more powerful imagery to contemplate as well. And Jake, how do you feel in hearing that this action that you chose to take on and the way that you chose to act, that it was being received as being a good thing in the middle of hell, to quote Thiri's words? How does it feel to understand the context of in which you were acting?
Well, it's pretty fucking powerful. Part of the reason why and maybe I should have probably said this earlier, but part of the reason is that, I was, sitting, in my meditation cushion, and, I'd, do the chanting and stuff afterwards. And in some ways that felt like nebulous and kind of and impotent at the same time. And like, I knew it was like, I believe that was doing something, but it didn't, what Thiri allowed me to do was to like give some specificity to something that was bothering me. And like that I was, so now that I could, like, there was a face there's somebody that I could help or, do whatever I could, to not whatever I could, but, just show up for. That's, that enabled me to do that. I've always thought that, a lot of the good things that happen in life are just the product of showing up for something. My own background in recovery, how do you stay off drugs? You do it one day at a time. You keep showing up every day. I tell this to my students that if you want to graduate from college, you got to show up for class every day. And, so being able to do something every month, like concretely, like, I don't know, it made it real to me rather than just, oh, I hope those people, all their suffering ends. It's not as wishy-washy as that kind of wish, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing I'd like to ask you is, I often, in the last 2 years, I've often been asked by people, well, what can we do? This is a professional military, one of the heaviest armed militaries in Southeast Asia that has backers in Russia. And I'm just this normal person living in wherever, and what can maybe I can give some money, but what can I really do? And kind of, a very removed, hopeless feeling from it. And the way I've come to answer that is, certainly I don't want to give a checklist of like, well, these are your means and you've done this much, but you could be doing that. Getting into that whole judgment is really awful. It's nothing I'm interested in speaking about, much less even considering or thinking about. Those are really up to one's own individual ideas and means. But what I do speak to is there's this moment where one decides I'm going to be involved or not. And that involvement can take any form. It can take a very minimal form of volunteer service or of taking some action or reaching out to someone occasionally even. And it's really just that thing turning on. And I think being a foreign ally myself and knowing many other foreigners who were in Myanmar for whatever reason, for business or travel or meditation or monasticism or academia, whatever they were there for, it was really shocking to me after the coup to see some people that I thought had benefited greatly from their involvement in Myanmar, spiritually, materially, or career-wise or whatever, and really not have anything go off in their mind that they should be involved in any way right now. And again, it's not to dictate what someone does do. So there are people I know that that are participating in minimal ways, but doing it with a very full heart. It was just the question of something not being turned on. And in your case, something was turned on. You don't have a strong connection to Myanmar, although there's interest in Asia and certainly Buddhism and meditation, but something in you turned on, clicked on, and was like, yes, I'm going to go this extra step. And so I'm wondering if you could go back to that initial decision, as well as every subsequent decision, because you're really making that decision every time over, and just talk about what was clicking on, why it was clicking on, and what that mechanism was about.
I mean, kind of like I said, a lot of it was about the frustration of seeing all the suffering that was going on and feeling pretty helpless that I could do anything about that suffering. And it just seemed like to me that, especially after like that march was over, that it just kind of just fell off the radar. And at least I mean, for me anyways, most of the places I get from information from are, kind of like mainstream places. And, even when like I would listen to like the BBC, like there just wasn't that much there. And I thought, this is crazy. And then, so I was like, it just like, I think I was looking to do something about it. I just didn't have an outlet to do that. But the podcast, and then very specifically, at the end of that episode, when you said, if you write to us after you donate and, say that you want that money to go to that person, then, that kind of like turned on the light for me. Like, okay, I have some agency here now, because like I can, it's not just I'm giving it to some foundation and then I get the, like no disrespect, like I get a newsletter saying all the things that you're doing, but like there's no sense of like that's actually done, like that, where's my money in that, right? And I think a lot of people, when they donate, want to have like feel that like their money is being used for something specific, and like being able to just say, just send it to her, like just short circuited all of that. And that was, to me, that was the green light when I was like, okay, when I get to wherever I'm going and I have some time, that's when I'm going to start clicking the buttons and see what to send the money. And ongoing, like, this is going to sound bad, but like when the war in Ukraine started, like I just felt really sick to my stomach, because I felt that like, okay, whatever was there is like, whatever attention that was going to be given to that is just going to be gone now. And to be honest, like the only thing I ever hear about is every once on the BBC when the Tatmadaw, sentences Aung San Suu Kyi for another however many years they give her. It's like becoming a farce, if it wasn't, even though it was already. But like that's the only thing I ever hear about it, besides what you guys do. Or my other alternative was to like get on Twitter and like see what people were posting from inside Myanmar. But for me, that got to be almost unhealthy, because at certain points, like I was watching people get killed every day, and like that was, I was like, okay, I need to step back from this, because like there's only so much I can change. That's there's only so much I can do about it. And so, just keep showing up every month. I got to send the money for Thiri, then that, and just doing like, I don't know, that at least gives me I feel like I'm doing something about it.
Right. And you mentioned the knowledge of specifically what your contribution is doing to actually make a difference. I wonder, Thiri, if you can speak to anything that those funds were able to do. I know I'm putting you on the spot here because it's been years of receiving contributions, and that your work is multifaceted, and at this moment in time, you might not be able to bring all to mind, but I wonder if anything stands out of what those funds were able to support.
Yeah. So those fund, I think it come to the PayPal, and so I these days a lot of me and my friends we don't have we don't have job, but we've been we have been supporting to we have to donate we have to contribute money to the here and there some places in the in the area like I still have some savings, so I have some money for myself, so any extra money that I receive when I tell the story or something, I I share some of them, not all. I use it for myself because for my relocation and everything. Um, but some of the things here and there, I have to donate. Like let's say the school in Middle Burma when they need the when they when they need the money for the what's it called, the notebook for the children, and sometimes my people in Myanmar they would have to ask for the donation for the certain different issues, let's say for blanket or for the school fees or for snack or something. So any occasional time people would like reach out to me, so I could send some of the money to them. So I share the money with them, but not all. Like most of the money it goes to me, and it just go for my relocation, and it go for my because I moved to the another country, go for my relocation and go for some of the bill. So that's most of that's the money goes to. And and before that, I like to address the I like to share things. What Jake you just said about when you see the image of tragedies and it's overwhelming, right? And then people have to when when we approach the world with the tragedies and everything, people wants to care, but also very difficult to keep going on because it's very overwhelming to know uh, uh, all the tragic news around the world, like the bombing there and killing here, not only in Myanmar as well, like in Syria, in Palestine, in Ukraine, in everywhere, like around the world, right? A lot of the things going on. So um so so I don't want to approach people when I tell when I tell our story. That's not the approach that I want to take. Not not any more tragic story. Even though yeah, there are tragedy happening in our daily life. I just want to share the story of living. We are living, and I want people to also. I want to approach us like, look how we are living. Even in a difficult situation, this is how we are living. This is not I am not coming here to tell you how bad our life is and something. So that that's a message personally I will want to share to people around. I want people to care, but also I don't want to compete the tragedies or anything anymore because the world already have enough tragedy, and we are even being numb, and our empathy and sympathies are being numb because we've been kind of prone to all the tragic news around the world. So yeah, the approach that I want to do is more about the living. So that's why when I asked you guys to reach out to people who are living, it's to share hope and to share the to celebrate their living and to remind them that hey, you are living. So that kind of thing. And also you can be nice to you have the reason like Jake and Joe are the reason you can help us in a way is because you don't have a conflict or you don't have a similar violation, really big violations going on in your country. That doesn't mean that there's no violation going on in the U.S., but because you can help us because you don't have an active daily life violation going on, so you can also prevent it for yourself, and also you can be also nice. You when you think of us, when you think of our how difficult our life is and the living situation, um, not only reaching out to us, also be nice to people around you and be prevent the system that you have, do things that you have. It's do not take it granted. Whatever happening in our world, it can happen in your part of the world if the system fail. So the dictatorships and all the injustice coming, and if you remove all the citizenship and skin colors, race, religions, ethnics, whatever, it's human. We are connecting based on a human level. So we are connecting based on the injustice. You don't need to understand the complex political things to understand injustice. Like Jake may not necessarily know Myanmar politics, which is fine. It's okay. But we connect to human. We just like you breathe, I breathe. Just like you eat, I eat. Just like you want to live, I want to live. So just like you want to be happy, I want to be happy, and people of Myanmar wants to be happy, and people in the other conflict society as well. They also wants to live. So 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 it's more like human to human connection that I just want to address Jake last point. The 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 what you have been doing. I think it is the healthy way. And even if you don't want to hear the tragic news from us, which is fine, I'm telling to other people as well, which is fine as long as you find your own way of meaning to share your solidarity with us. I think it is, I want to say it is completely okay. It is completely fine. Jake, how are you? What's your
How
recovery?
am
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
recovery is about. I used to be a heroin addict, and but that's I don't know. I'm over 11 years clean now, so just that background um, is the short answer. I'm much happier than I used to be.
One day I hope to meet you in person. And I don't know. I really want to write it to you. I am a calligrapher and I like to write as well, but I really cannot find words because there are a lot that I want to talk to you, but
Yeah.
I really can't. I really can't write it down. So it feels so good, and I really really thank you. Really, it means a lot to me, and I happen to share about you to other friends as well. Like, hey, I have this friend, a friend, who I have never known, I have never seen, um, but he's been supporting, he's been helping, and that kind of thing. I happen to share with other people, other friends, so that they know that not alone. And when I share your money to the other friends, I will tell them that, hey, I got it from this money. I got it from a stranger, who is my fan, who's my fan who listened to it and he shared it to me, and then I share it with you guys. And so some of my friends have heard of your name, and even though they don't know you, and even it's you are, so you are known among us. That's what I want to say. You're not a stranger to us. We are familiar with your name, even though we don't know the last name, but it's fine. We're like, oh, we have that friend, Jack, somewhere in the US. And so yeah, I just want to share it with you. I told it to my mom, and my mom's, oh, such a great human being, and can you say thanks to him, and etc. So yeah, so you are known.
Well, that's cool. I mean, for your, when he asked you that question, the best answer I could have heard is, whatever you send has helped me maintain my well-being, you know?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I don't know if you, if you want to feel like you're if you want to feel like you need to be heard, um, I always view conversations and letters as like a tennis match. So if you volley me something, I'll volley it back.
sure, yeah. Thank you so much. And other than that, I don't really have anything to say, Joa. And thank you very much for making this happen, Joa, because this means a lot to me. And I hope that other people also, this conversation, it's very different, like receiver,
Mm,
givers, and like it's 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 sending back and forth, and it is so meaningful for me. And these three people from different parts and small actions that we do, it's something.
mm. It's just beautiful hearing that. And I mean, I just have a couple reflections on the last exchange. I'm reminded of my first meditation teacher, SN Goenka, and one comment he said that always in the 10-day course that always stuck out was that the he said, what is the best sign that you're on the path? What is a clear sign that you're really on the spiritual path? And you might expect him to say, like, you're seeing invisible beings, or you're developing certain powers, or you're having whatever the scriptures say about the different stages. You've had a sign that you're at that stage. He said, developing two qualities: generosity and gratitude. Generosity in wanting to look to others. What can you give? How can you help? How can you make their life easier? Gratitude of what has been given to you, and having that gratitude, having that feeling of being grateful that someone has done something for you, and holding that. And I appreciated what you said, Thiri. People giving me gifts, even small gifts, mean a great deal to me. And if it's a shirt, every time I wear the shirt, I think of that person. I think of the fact that they went out of their way to buy a shirt and then to give that to me. And every time I wear it, it just reinforces and reminds me of my relationship and meaning with that person. And so it's really an exchange of on both ways of the values of heart and mind, and being able to cultivate and develop those qualities. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And the second thought I had is the vulnerability that Thiri was sharing with on that podcast, Jake, to share your story of overcoming addiction of a really, really awful substance, which is really hard to get underneath from, and to come out of that, and not just come out of it, not just leave that behind and do so with a support group, but to come out of that nightmare and to have the wherewithal and the wholeness and the integrity to have, as you've referenced, that your journey of recovery has transformed from and transcended to not just being about you getting better and getting whole, but about your role as part of this society and this world society to someone you've never met, and a country you've never been to, and a struggle that you're not involved in. And the fact that this kind of beauty, this kind of goodness in the middle of hell, as Thiri put it, has come out of your own escape from a nightmare that many don't get away from. That's, and to be able to share that, I mean, that's also just very moving and powerful as well.
Thank you. It's I don't I don't know. Anything that's ever good's happened to me has been some random person doing something that they probably forgot about. And so I don't know. I've walked up to people, said, "You said this like 10 years ago, and I'll never forget it." And he's like, "I don't even remember saying that." So you never know. So,
well, it's also just a powerful reminder that whatever situations we find ourselves in, whatever brokenness, whatever hopelessness that we're in, where we don't even know how we can get out of it ourselves. And I think all three of us here, and every single person listening, has been in some situation where you feel like everything that could is broken down, including one's faith in oneself at times. And to know that there's a way to get through it that not just completes yourself and gets yourself out of that, but also goes beyond to being able to help others in their time of need. That's just zooming out from all of this. That's a powerful message of humanity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to put it real simplistically, it's, being a giver rather than a taker, or trying to be. You can have that aspiration theory, if there's a thing where you can actually like write to somebody, that would be something that I would be interested in participating in. Or you could start something like that where people exchange letters or something. I think that would be pretty intense and nice.
Yeah, yeah, that would be nice because during the Holocaust, I went to the Holocaust Memorial Museum, and that's there are people who writes the letters, and I remember there was one lady who has trying to take her pen pal person out. I think she wrote to the U.S. government, and she just like trying to get that person, trying to get the I think that Jew woman and her family
Mm-hmm.
get out of the situation. And so that's something I don't remember exactly the word, but like that's I remember this kind of thing. So hope is important, I think. What I was saying is it's this little pen pal kind of thing, like letters, and I think those will be good. Like especially now we have the social media. In the past, people send
Mm-hmm.
the actual letters. Now we can actually do the actual letters, which I love that. But also we can always write the letters online and send a little bit of message, a little bit of small things, and reminding the people of Myanmar that they live.
So with that, I just want to thank both of you for coming on here, for sharing your stories. Hearing those very different perspectives from different parts of the world is very educational for me, very inspiring, and I think for our listeners as well. So thank you so much for taking that time with us.
You're very welcome. And I hope whatever comes out of this is it generates some more people doing more things, or at least at the very, at the minimum, more awareness. So thank you.
Thank you both of you to make this happen, to have a conversation. So like I said, when you to the other listener, like I said, if you share things, and if you hear from us, not just only take it in, also making sure that we are also making sure that we know that you heard. So give us the echo of voices that hey, we hear you. And I will keep sharing donuts to other people as long as they're not getting a lot of sugars. I'm not gonna spread the sugars, but I am gonna share the little kindness and little love to strangers any possible time I can. So it's to honor Jake. So thank you so much, and keep hearing us.
Many listeners know that in addition to running these podcast episodes, we also run a nonprofit, Better Burma, which carries out humanitarian projects across Myanmar. While we regularly post about current needs and proposals from groups on the ground, we also handle emergency requests, often in matters that are quite literally life or death. When those urgent requests come in, we have no time to conduct targeted fundraisers, as these funds are often needed within hours. So please consider helping us to maintain this emergency fund. We want to stress that literally any amount you can give allows us to respond more flexibly and effectively when disaster strikes. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects, as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support. perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give it another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.
Oba yarananda dayananga yaranaya dayanam boda yaranam